Hey friends, welcome to our February watercolor subscription box tutorial. This month we are going to be painting this floral heart, so let's jump in and start with getting to know our supplies, and then we will get right into the painting. Hey everyone, welcome to our February watercolor subscription box tutorial with me and Craftimo. So we are going to open our February box. Remember, mine is not going to be packaged the exact same as yours. Yours has properly been packaged. Mine has been thrown together by me. But either way, let's open it up and dive right in. Okay, so one of the first things you should see is this card with the painting that we are going to be doing for our tutorial with some information on the back. Then inside you should receive 2 brushes, a 6 cat's tongue and a 10 dagger, 4 new watercolor half pans, some custom washi tape, as well as a tracing template for the heart that we will be painting today. If you don't want to use our template, you do not have to. You can always create your own heart or your own patterns. You will also be supplied with some tracing paper to transfer the image of the heart onto your watercolor paper. And lastly, our 100% cotton cold press watercolor paper. Each month as a special gift, you do get a bonus item, which this month is our heart watercolor washi tape that we will use to tape down our tracing paper, and you can also use for anything else you like. Other supplies you will need for today's tutorial is a jar of water, paper towel, a pencil, and eraser. So now let's grab our watercolor palette, open up our watercolors, and put them in. Okay, so the colors that we are using this month are Purple Lake, Permanent Rose, which is always one of my favorite colors, Raw Sienna, and Hooker's Green Light. So those are all the colors we need for the project this month. Now, let's get to know our supplies. Okay, as we start to get to know our supplies, take one sheet of paper and cut it in half. On one of these halves, we are going to be practicing mixing our 4 colors to see the variety of colors that we can get. And then our next half, we are going to be practicing some practice strokes. I want you to get a feel of the marks that they make, the strokes that we're going to need to paint our florals for our heart, and just get an overall feel of how these brushes work. After we finish getting to know our supplies a bit better with color mixing and brush strokes, I am going to show you how to paint each individual flower before we start our floral heart project. Now let's get into mixing our colors. I'm going to start by grabbing my size 6 cat's tongue brush to do some mixing. So I need my water and my paper towel ready and my paper, and we're ready. So I'm just going to make sure I wet my brush. Now with brand new brushes, you may notice that their bristles are quite stiff. So what comes on the bristles with a brand new brush is not a glue, but it has this finish that keeps the bristles nice and stiff for packaging and traveling, just so they don't get all bent during travel. So you're just going to want to rinse off your brush thoroughly, maybe wipe it on your paper towel a bit, rinse it again, just to get any of that stiffness off the bristles. You don't need to go crazy, you just need to make sure you get all of that off. Okay, so now our brush is nice and wet. I'm going to grab a bunch of water on my brush, and I'm just going to put little drops of water onto my pans. This will help activate the color to prepare them to be painted with. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to swatch all the colors that I have. So let's start with our Purple Lake. And I'm just swishing my brush around in the pan to make sure I pick up as much color as I can. And you know what? Before I put it on the page, I'm actually going to put some of my mixing wells here so we can use them to mix later. Okay, try and grab lots of pigment. Maybe put it in a couple different places. Okay, and then I'm going to just do a little swatch with my brush. And this way, while I'm doing a swatch, I can also kind of get a feel of how my brush feels in my hand, the kind of lines it can make, you know, just get to know your supplies. Okay, let's wash our brush off. Let's grab our Permanent Rose, make sure there's enough water on there to activate it. So I'm really swishing it around. I'm going to grab a bit more water, bring some over to my mixing wells. Like that. And then I'm just gonna swatch it on my paper. These colors are so vibrant. Let's try another little mark here. Just get a feel for your brush. Okay. We are going to do more practice drills with our brushes after we swatch all the colors. Okay, let's grab some of this raw sienna, which is a really nice yellow. Put some here. I really should have put 1, 2, 3, 4 in order, but I didn't. It's fine. It's fine. Oh, I grabbed some green. That's okay. Just going to grab a little bit more water. If you feel like you're not pulling up as much paint, you might need a bit more water to really activate it. And just swish it around. All right. We have our next color here and just get a little feel for it. All right, and then lastly, our Hooker's Green Light, which is a beautiful color. I'm just gonna put it over here. And then swatch it. Okay, so there are our 4 colors. Now, that's a pretty good palette to start out with, but now let's do some mixing to see what else we can achieve mixing these 4 colors together. Okay, so I'm going to start off by seeing how many different greens we can make. Now, try and mix them with each of these other colors at different ratios, maybe. Because we want to keep the integrity of the green, maybe we'll just take a little bit of each color to just slightly change the colors of green in our palette. So wash off your brush, and we're just going to take, let's take a little bit of Purple Lake. As you can see, I dip it right back in, but that's just me. Like that. And we've changed the green to a bit of a darker green. Now, if you ever get another color in your palette like this, just wash off your brush. Clean it up a bit. Ooh, look at that. I added a bit more. This is more purple heavy to our green, and we get a nice dark purple color. Okay. So play around with different ratios, maybe more green or more purple, see what you can get. I want to intensify that green a bit more. I'm just going to add a bit more green. Oh, now I need more purple. Hold on. Yeah, you get a nice dark green. Okay, now let's try with the pink. So I'm going to grab a bit more of this Permanent Rose, mix it with my green, and this creates a bit more of like a muted green, a browny green, which is nice. Okay, and then again, you can just grab a bit more of the green if you like. You can get it back to that color, maybe a bit more of the pink, and you can get kind of like this brownish color. Let's add a bit more green to it. I have a feeling if we add a bit of yellow too, that might look nice. You get this kind of like olivey green. Now, if it seems really light in value, that's because I have more water on my brush than actual paint. You're just going to need to swish your brush around in your color a bit more to make it a more vibrant, darker value of that color. Okay, and then let's add our raw sienna to this green. And you get this really vibrant yellow green. Let's add even more yellow. Okay, you can play with different levels. I feel like I don't have enough paint in there. Like that. Let's add a little bit of purple. Let's see what happens. Okay, so there's a bunch of different greens we can use. Now let's mix some purples and pinks. So we can go grab our pink here, mix it with our purple. Let's see if it makes a difference. It makes this kind of like medium shade. I'm gonna grab more purple, grab more pink. Makes this, ooh, there, like this magenta color. That's really nice. And then you could always tone that down if you didn't want it as vibrant with a little bit of this green. Maybe make it a bit darker of a purple. Like that. Let's add some yellow to our purple. See what that does. Well, it makes this like warmer kind of purple. It's interesting. Grab some of that yellow. Like this warmish kind of brown. Because if you know a bit of color theory, yellow and purple sit directly across from each other on the color wheel. They are both contrasting colors. So if you mix contrasting colors evenly, you will get some shade of brown. So knowing that, we could add just a bit of purple to our yellow to make a darker yellow, like more of like a yellow ochre. Although this is pretty close to yellow ochre already. We can grab a different shade of yellow, like that. Okay. Now let's add our yellow and our permanent rose. And we can get this vibrant peach. Look at that. Okay, and if you wanted to make it more, maybe like of an orangey color, you can add more yellow. Or if you want to make it more pinky with just like a coral, you can just add more pink. What if we wanted to add some purple to it? Let's just see what happens. Make it a bit darker. Like that. And there you go. Look at all the variety of colors we can use for this. Okay, so now that we know what colors we can mix, I'm actually just gonna flip over my piece of paper and we can do some of our practice strokes on the back, and then we can use the other half for the actual flowers that we're gonna be learning how to paint. Okay, so let's start with our cat's tongue brush. And this is a fun brush to use. So again, I'm just gonna wet up my paints, just make sure they're nice and wet. I cleaned off my palette, but you definitely don't have to. You can continue to use the mixes that we already made. And you can just pick any color. I'm going to start off with green. And I'm just going to practice doing different strokes with my brush. So using really, really light pressure to make really thin strokes. Maybe I can give it a little bit of heavier pressure to make slightly thicker strokes. And then I'm going to push down to the belly of the brush, so the biggest part, using heavier pressure to get nice thick strokes. Now you can see with this brush, if you turn it flat like this, it's pretty flat and wide, but if you turn it to the side, sorry, there we go, it kind of looks like a round brush. So let's use it on its side and see what else it can do. Okay, so just doing the same kind of pressure stroke, light, maybe medium, maybe really press down, see how thick you can get it, and then come back up. And then you can even practice going from light pressure to heavy pressure. So let's turn it back flat again. So light pressure and then press down heavy pressure, dragging it across. Bring it back up to light pressure, like that. Again, light pressure, heavy pressure. This is going to be a big stroke creating our flowers. Light pressure, heavy pressure. So you could always do just rows of that. And then you can practice something called a C curve, which we're going to be using for our flowers. And you can do it in any direction because with our rose, we do it in lots of different directions. But you're just going to use the light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure stroke, but you're going to curve your brush as you're doing it. So start with the tip, light pressure, heavy pressure, press down, and you're curving it like a C. And you come back up to light pressure. Let's try it going underneath, okay? So light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. Let's try it to the side. Okay, so you can start at the top, light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. And then the other side, light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. And again, that's using the brush flat. You could always turn it on its side to get smaller strokes. Okay, maybe not as wide. Same kind of thing, all right? Now let's try and combine that stroke to create two sides of a petal. Okay, so let's start with the same C curve like this. You're just gonna go light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure coming back up. Then you're gonna do the other side of the petal. This time you're doing the C curve underneath. So start at the same point, light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure, and then meet the tip of that one. And you have like a leaf or petal shape. You can use it for both. Let's try it again, but make it a bit more rounded. So you go light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure, but kind of cut it off a little bit and just make it a little bit more blunt. Try again, light pressure, heavy pressure, and then just kind of use the tip of your brush to draw it out. Now, when you're painting these flowers or when you're painting these strokes, you can see that there's a little pool of water here in paint. To avoid creating some like bloom marks, which if you've seen my channel before, you know exactly what those are, and this happens a lot. All you have to do is just take the tip of your brush and just go over the whole petal again, move that water around. Just make sure it's distributed evenly across the petal, and then you shouldn't get those marks. If there's still too much water, you can always just dry off your brush a bit on your paper towel and move it around. Okay? So if you notice you're doing any of these strokes and you're getting these kind of blunt marks like that, that's just why. It's just because the water and the paint is not distributed evenly through the strokes. So you can just go back over with your brush. Okay? Now let's try and do some strokes just by using a dabbing motion, using the shape of the brush like this. Press down, up. And again, you can just move that water around like so. And you kind of already have like a petal mark there. Down, up. Just move it around. What if you place it on its side? You get this other kind of petal shape. Just dabbing it, using the shape of your brush. All right? And just play and experiment with the shape of this brush. All right, now let's use our dagger brush. Now, dagger brushes are fairly new to me, actually. I haven't used them a ton, except for starting these boxes, but they are quite fun. This is a larger one. I do prefer smaller ones in some senses, but this we can use for some fun techniques. Okay, so with the dagger, it is quite different than, say, a regular angle brush. So this is an angle brush. See how it's a very sharp edge? This one has a very nice slope. So I want you to, again, wet your brush. Make sure you get all of that stiffness off of your brush. And I want you to just practice creating some thin lines with the tip. And then you can even turn it on its side, press down to the belly and just drag it along. You could use it as a wash brush. See how big you can make your strokes? But the great thing about this brush is that you can create some really cool petals because of that softness of the curve. So I'm just going to grab a color here. And what I want you to do is put the tip down with the curved side down. Okay, I don't want you to have the flat side down, curved side down. And you're going to start with the tip, light pressure, and then you're going to move down to heavy pressure. And you're going to kind of twist your brush and bring it up. And it creates kind of half of a petal, which is really cool. Then again, you're going to do the other side, but you need that curved side down. So point to where the point was. So instead of going like this, you're just moving that curve to the other side. Line up the point, light pressure, heavy pressure, and then curve your brush up. And you have this really cool petal shape, which is really nice. And again, you can just use the tip of your brush to kind of move that water and paint around like you need, okay? So that's a technique that's really fun to use with this brush. You can just keep practicing. You just lay it down kind of on its curve and move the brush, the back of the brush around, and then the other way, which is really fun. Okay, and then you can even practice just dabbing your brush, using the shape of your brush. So again, the curved side down, and just dab it. See what kind of shapes you get. Dab it a bit on its side. Okay, you can try with the flat side down just to see what that does. Just light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. See what kind of marks you can make. Try with the curved side down. Light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. You can get some nice long leaves like that. And a fun thing about this brush shape is you can curve it to create these really beautiful, effortlessly long leaves. So again, curve side down, point of the brush, light pressure, heavy pressure, and then curve it this way. Maybe curve it that way. And then come back up to the tip. And it looks like you have this kind of curved leaf, which is really cool. Okay, so it's so important if you're using a dagger brush or a cat's tongue brush for the first time, you really need to play around and get a feel for the brush because it's not going to come like second nature. It took me a while to kind of understand how to use these brushes. Not this one as much. This I feel like emulates kind of more of a round brush, but the dagger definitely is something that you need to play around with. So even fill a full sheet if you need to, of practice strokes. Get some cheaper paper if you have some watercolor paper that's cheap that you don't want to, waste for the cotton paper that we got in the boxes. Try that and just fill pages. Just build that muscle memory with your hand of doing these strokes, and then you will get it over time. But definitely get to know your supplies a bit more. Okay, so now that we know our supplies, I want you to grab that other half sheet of paper, and we are going to make a couple flowers before we place it onto our floral heart. Okay, so here is our paper, and we are going to begin. I'm going to start off, we're going to be doing a lot of our flowers with the cat's tongue. I feel like it just works the best for this, but we can definitely use both. So the first flower I'm going to teach you is a rose. And you can just wet your brush, use any color you like. And if you got the previous box, you can always use some colors from the previous box. You can use some of that purple or blue, whatever you want to do it. There's no rules. I'm just guiding you with what I have, but make up your own rules, have fun with this, and be creative. Okay, so let's grab our color. And we're going to start off with a pretty saturated brush, so lots of pigment on our brush. And we're just going to do, using the tip of our brush, some little kind of like tiny little C curves just going around. They're all touching each other, like so. Okay, they're all touching each other, and you're just doing these little strokes of tiny curves going in a circle. Okay, it's not one continuous spiral. They're just tiny little C curves going around. Okay, then you're going to wet your brush just a little bit with the pigment still on it, and you're going to do that C curve that we did, like this. Okay, and it's going to touch the outer little C curves that we did here. So you're just going to go and touch it, going around and up like that. Okay, if it's not pointed, it's okay. It's totally perfectly fine. Okay, and you're going to do another one over here. Like that. We're leaving a little bit of white space. And then we'll do another one. Okay, and then if there's a little bit of white space, sorry if that was out of focus, I'll do it again. If there's a big white space like this, you can just always fill it in with some more curves, like so. Okay, then you're going to grab a little bit more water on your brush, making it even lighter. And you're just going to do some bigger, shorter, kind of fluffier C curves going around. Grab a little bit more pigment. Okay, maybe like 4 or 5. Okay, like so. And then if you want to go back in with a bit more pigment towards the center, mine's already started to dry because I had to look at my camera for a second. There was something wrong with it if it was blurry. But you want to ideally add more color in the center when it's wet, but if not, that's okay. We're just practicing. Okay, so let's do that again. Okay, let's grab some permanent rose this time for fun. All right. Again, starting with the center, these little C curves all touching like so. Okay, and then you're going to do your slightly larger ones, not all the way down, not a lot of pressure where they're really thick, but little C curves like that. I like to do 3. Okay, and then I'm going to just add a bit more water to my brush, and then right over top where 2 of them meet is where I usually like to add my bigger ones. So I'm using heavier pressure to make them fluffier. Big one over here. Big one over here. Again, if there's too much white space that looks a little odd, you can always just go back in, just add little lines like so. Okay, and then we can just go around again, adding some thicker, shorter ones like so. Now, the trick with leaving white space so it doesn't look too weird is you always want a little bit of white space, but you don't want to make these really arched C curves. So let's say we're doing another one down here. You don't want to do these high arches where there's going to be a lot of white space. Okay, that looks really weird. You kind of want, instead of having your C curves like arched high like this, like an actual letter C, you want them kind of flattened out, a little bit flatter, okay? So you want some white space, but not a ton. You want that little bit of separation, these little bits of white space in between the petals, but not a ton where it's like looking weird, right? So try and flatten out those C curves a bit more. Okay, so our next flower that we're gonna do is a peony. We can even try it with our dagger brush. So just pick a color, and we're going to use that brush stroke that we did before. So if you want to turn your paper, you totally can, whatever feels the most comfortable. Okay, and you want to think of the bottom of the peony where all of the petals meet. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to make this petal shape. Remember how we did that? The point, and curve it around. There's one petal. Okay, and then I'm going to do another one. Point is still going to be where the petal is, the point on this petal. And I'm just going to curve it around that one, like so. And then I'm going to do another one. Again, the tip is pointed the same place where they're all pointed together, okay? I'm just going to lay it down and then kind of curve it around like so. Okay, and then if you want to go back over it just to make sure it's all even, you can, like that. Okay, so we have 3 petals. Then you're going to take the tip of your brush and you're just going to do these kind of like little curves at the top, on top of this center petal. And then again, using the flat side down, you're just going to do some C curves that are a bit larger going around the top, like so. Okay, now if you want to just kind of like curve out some of these petals of the peony to make it a bit more of like a ball shape, you totally can. Like that. You can always add a bit more, color if you want. And that's kind of the shape of the peony. So you can do it with this brush, or you can also do it with the cat's tongue. Let's do a purple one. Okay, so again, all the base of the petals are all pointing to the same point. Okay, so they're all coming from the bottom. All the base of the petals are coming from the bottom to create this ball. So let's start with our first one. Point, so light pressure, heavy pressure, and then kind of drag it around. And we're going to do, instead of doing it in 1 stroke or 2 strokes, we're going to do it in 2 strokes. You're going to go again from the base, do the other side of the petal, kind of drag it. And you don't want the edges of the petals to be anything, perfect. You kind of want them jagged and curved and funny looking. Okay, then we're going to do another one. I'm actually going to turn my brush on its side. So we have the thinner side. Again, the point is meeting this point, and I'm going to do a C curve around it here. And I'm just going to lift it up, so I'm not dragging that tip out. I'm just going to lift it up so it's a bit more of like a circular, blunt end to the petal. Then we're going to do the other side. Okay, same thing. You can just even draw out the edge of the petal. Grab our color, do some more little lines over top. This is like the center of the peony where they're all kind of like closely together. And then with our brush on its side, using the smaller part, I'm just going to do these little flatter C curves going around. Like so. Okay, and you can use as many as you like. And if you wanted to, you could even have some petals like coming down. So again, the base of the petals meeting there, drag, and have like a fluffy petal coming down this way. It's totally up to you. If you want to turn your paper because you work better this way, you could do another petal, maybe falling this way, and just kind of dabbing it like so. You can have just some petals coming around, make it as fluffy as you want, like that. Okay, have another one coming out this way. Totally up to you. And again, just move your paint around so it doesn't all dry in one spot. Okay, and then lastly, just to add a little bit of something to these peonies, you can grab a little bit of yellow and just do some little dots, like there's the stamen kind of poking out, like so. And then to any of these, you can add some greenery. So I'm just going to use my regular green here. I like to have the green come out from the bottom, and you're just going to do a leaf shape, doing our pressure stroke, the C curves. So light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. I have my brush on its side. Light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. You can have a little stem coming out this way and then have another one like so. We could grab our dagger brush and just use the shape of our dagger brush just to kind of create these rounded ones if you like, or you can drag it or use the flat part like this to create the shape of a leaf. Don't worry too much about it. Just experiment and have fun. And then lastly, those are the two flowers we're going to use for this. Lastly, you can create some fillers. So I'm just going to grab some green. So we're going to be doing some big flowers in the piece, and then we're going to create some filler pieces. So like little bits of greenery or buds, just to fill in those white spaces. So you're going to start by grabbing your size 6 brush. You're going to create little stems like this. And then you're just going to use the shape of the tip of the brush. Again, it's on its flat side, not the big side, the thinner side. And you're just going to dab. Just press down and up. You can get these tiny little leaves, tiny little fillers, like so. We could always put that somewhere, or you could create little buds just by using the flatter side like this. Put them together, do a little curve over top like that. Again, you just gotta move it around, the water around like that. Wash it off. You could add a little bit of green, add a stem, maybe some leaves, and you have fillers like that. Okay, and you can do the same thing with your dagger brush. Just tap down like so. Okay, just creating, you can do a little C curve to that side, and there's like a long bud, whatever you like, play around. But that's kind of the gist of the flowers that we're going to be doing in our floral heart piece. Okay, so now we've practiced that. Let's get into the final watercolor piece. Okay, now it's time to transfer our image onto our watercolor paper. So here you have a printed image of the heart. Now you're going to take one piece of your tracing paper, and you can take your pencil or a pen if you'd like. Now, you know what I might do is just take some of my washi tape, just a little bit, just to make sure I'm keeping it in place, and also just because it's super cute. Okay, just taping it down to the image, and I'm just going to trace around it. Okay, like so. And then what you're going to do is you are going to lift up your tracing paper. Now this design isn't that intricate, so it's totally okay if you want to just do your own heart. You don't have to trace it. So on the back of the tracing paper on the image, you're just going to take your pencil and you're just going to scribble over the line. Does not have to be neat by any means, like so. Okay, now you're going to take your watercolor paper and you're going to put the scribble side down. You're going to place it wherever you'd like to on your watercolor paper. If you only want to use half a piece of paper, you could always, I think it's big enough. Yep, you could always use just half and then use the rest for, practice. I'm just going to do it on one full sheet like this. I'm going to tape it down again so it doesn't move. And then again, I'm going to use my pencil and I'm going to go over my traced image. If you want for your original traced image, the first part while we're outlining the heart, you could always use a pen first for that, just so it's a bit darker, maybe easier to see. I just use a pencil, but you're just going to go back over that traced image. And what it's doing is it's pressing down just on the graphite on the back that we want to be transferred. Now, I don't think you need any special pencil to do this with. I feel like sometimes the darker the better, the more, this is a word, graphite-y, the pencil the better. But I've done it with like a lead, what are those? The mechanical pencils, and it works too. Should work fine. Okay, you're just going around the traced image like so, and then you should be able to lift it up and you have a really light sketch of your heart. I know it's really light, but you really want it to be light so you don't necessarily see a lot of the heart underneath. And even so, I will take my eraser. I love using a kneaded eraser, and I just make it even lighter just so I can see it. I know it's hard to see it on camera, but just so I have an outline. Okay, so for the purpose of this video, I did make it darker just so you guys could see it, but I would recommend going over it with your eraser just to make it lighter so you don't see the heart, the pencil heart as clearly. You could always erase it after all of your watercolors have dried, all of your flowers. The only thing is that if you go over the pencil with your watercolors, it's really hard to get that pencil mark out from underneath the watercolors. So you're just gonna have to make sure that you're painting within the lines. Okay, so let's begin. And the placement for our flowers are gonna be different than the image on the box, okay? So this was the original that I did. We're not gonna copy it exact. We're gonna have fun, but the main thing I want you to think of is that you're gonna be painting these larger flowers, kind of see how they're spread out nicely. And then there's leaves in between. I just kind of want you to give a nice equal kind of distance in between the flowers. And what I want you to try to avoid doing is doing a big flower here and a big flower here. I find that looks really weird. So what I would almost recommend doing is doing like a big flower here, and then maybe one here, here, and here, just so it's not two big flowers that it just, when it looks too symmetrical, like you have one in this side, one in this side, the exact spot, it doesn't look as appealing as if it did if it was more asymmetrical. Okay, so pick a flower that you'd like to start with. Okay, and so if we are doing one here, it's going to be slightly out of the outline, and I'll just show you how I do that. So let's just start with our pink, and we'll start with our rose. And again, mix your colors however you like them. I'm not following this exact, this is just kind of a reference. Okay, and I'm going to start here, kind of not right in the middle of this circular kind of hump area, just slowly, just slightly south of that area. So I'm going to use my size 6 brush, the cat's tongue, and I'm just going to start with my little C curves going around like this. Really nice and messy. And then I'm going to use the side of the brush again to do our medium-sized C curves. And again, remember they're touching each other. They're touching those little C curves in the middle. They're not big kind of arches. Now I'm going to use the flat side of my brush. I'm just going to add a bit more water just so it's a bit lighter. The flat side, so these medium ones, we use the side. Now we're going to use the flat side, and we're going to do our bigger C curves to make them fluffier. Bigger. Bigger. We're going to try not to touch that pencil mark. And bigger. Again, I'm leaving a little bit of white space there. And I'm just going to use the tip of my brush to go right next to the pencil mark just to kind of draw it out a bit better. And then I might do a couple more just shorter, fluffier ones going around. Okay, they don't have to be perfect, remember. Okay, and then I'm just going to re-wet this area a little bit. I'm just going to grab a bit more pigment, and I'm going to tap it more towards the center just to make it a little bit darker in the center, like that. It just creates a bit more depth within our flowers. Okay, you can just do little lines around like that. And then while it's still wet, I'm going to add some leaves. So I just have this green here. You can use the regular green. You can mix your greens. I would suggest mixing some of your colors beforehand. Maybe we'll do that right after this flower. And then let's just do a leaf down here. Maybe one that's kind of cut off here. So you can just do the base of it. Okay, because we really want to go to the edge of these flowers. Maybe we'll do one here. Like that. You can grab a bit more pigment. Just kind of tap it in. Now I'm going to have some funky kind of watercolor blooms, those marks that we don't necessarily love, but I'm just going to go with it. I kind of like it sometimes, so I'm not going to go over every stroke that I did to make sure it's all even. I'm just going to kind of go with the flow here. And then maybe I'll have another one coming up this way. Just a small one, okay? Okay, let's do our next flower. So this is taking up a lot of this area. We're going to have kind of like a half one over here, but I want to focus on another hole. So let's do one down here and then maybe up there. Let's do our peony. So let's actually grab our dagger brush. I'm going to grab my purple lake color. And I'm going to do a nice peony right here. Okay, so again, starting from the tip and the curved side down, we're going to drag the edge kind of around like that. Again, meeting the point, and then drag back. Okay. Then we are going to go on either side. If you need to turn your paper, you can. Again, the point is always meeting where those other points started. And we're going to just drag around. And it can touch it a little bit like that. Same thing on this side, drag around like that. Then we're going to do our small little kind of curves like that. And then using the flat side, we're just going to do some shorter C curves going around. This takes off some of that pigment, make it a little bit lighter. And again, make them messy. Let's make this one have a bit, I'm just going to kind of move the pigment around that side. Let's make this one have some of those fluffier petals dropping down. So again, we're just meeting in the middle here and just moving the back of that brush like so. I kind of want to curve it a bit more like that. I'm going to have one coming to the other side. Actually, I got to really move my painting. And just kind of move the back of that brush. The point is always staying in the same place. You're just moving the back end of that brush. Now this looks a little odd, right? So let's just take the flat side and just do some curves coming around like so. And I'm just going to re-wet these because I'm actually going to take some darker pigment, some darker purple lake, and just bring it close to where they all kind of meet here, just to create a bit of depth at that point. Maybe you can do some at the tips, whatever you like. Okay, so there is that. I'm going to grab my small size 6 brush and I'm going to do some more leaves. We can create a different leaf color for the peonies if you like. Grab a little bit of yellow. I'm just going to kind of come down in between here. And then I always like to curve my leaves around the flowers. So they're going to come out, little stem, curve it around the flowers like that. And again, you're stopping right at the edge here. You're just placing leaves wherever you think they would look good. And then lastly, grab your yellow for some little bits in the center. You can overlap some of those squiggly lines. You can bleed a little bit. Why not? And then there is our peony. Okay, now let's do another rose here. Or should we do it here to make it a little bit less asymmetrical? I think we're going to do it up here. Yeah, let's create a different color. So I'm going to grab some more permanent rose. I'm going to grab some more yellow of the raw sienna. We have this like kind of coral color, and I'm going to do another rose up here. So again, little squiggly lines going in a circle like that. And then turning our brush on the side, doing our medium kind of C curves going around like that. Add a little bit of water, and then our bigger ones using the flat side. Like that. And then just adding a bit more water just to make it lighter in value, and then just creating some even more shorter but fatter petals. Okay, again, leaving just little pockets of white space. And then just grabbing a bit more of that color and just tapping it towards the center if it's still wet. You can always re-wet it if it's not. Like that. Let's grab our dark green again. So let's mix a bit more of it. I'm going to grab some of that purple and that green. Oops, a bit more purple. And then just go in between. I like doing something called a color bleed with my loose florals like this, where you just touch the petal just a bit and the color bleeds gently into the next. Just make sure you don't have a lot of water or paint on your brush, just so it doesn't take over the whole rose. Do a little line for a stem here. Have one coming out. Maybe having one come out this way. See, I always like to curve it around. And remember, you don't have to fill in all the white spaces just yet. We can do some of those little, the little fillers as well. Okay, let's do another peony, but we're only doing the half of one. So let's do kind of another pink rose. Not pink rose, but a pink color like this. We'll just do the permanent rose color with our peony. Now, because we're only doing half of it and we want to be careful not to touch the edge or too much of the other, I'm going to use my size 6 just so I have better control. Because this brush is so big, it's going to be kind of hard to manage it around the edges. So I'm just going to kind of just try and draw it with my size 6 cat's tongue. So I'm going to start here. So let's say that the base where all the petals meet is right here. And I'm just going to drag it and then kind of just bluntly stop so we get that short stop, the rounded edge, and meet it on the other side like that. Then we're going to do another one coming up around the side, curve it, blunt stop like that. And then just slightly over here because you're not going to see much of that. And then let's bring some more of that pink color to the base here. Okay, and then we're just going to do some little squiggly lines over top like that. Now I'm going to go behind this leaf here, like this peony's behind, and I'm just going to do some little C curves like so. And if I want to just kind of fluff it out a little bit more there, I can. Okay, you're just seeing a little bit of it. Now, if you wanted to add like a little bit more of the purple or something, you could always add some more of another color into it just to change it just slightly. Why not, right? Let's add a little bit of shadow. Oops. Like that. Now I'm going to grab my yellow and just do my little stamen part here. And now we need some greenery. I'm going to use the same green as this peony. So let's use our yellow. Ooh, that's a lot of yellow. And some green. I kind of want to dull it down a bit. I'm going to grab a little bit of pink, just make it more of an olivey color. And I'm just going to have it curve around this peony like this. Like that. And then we can have half a leaf down here. It's even kind of a slightly different color than that green. That's okay. And we can have a leaf right here. And I think I might just leave a little bit of white space for some small fillers there. Okay. And then we're going to do one more flower right here. Because we have a rose kind of on either side, we're going to do another half peony right there. Okay, and I'm going to grab, let's see, whatever's in this palette. Whatever's in this palette. I'm going to grab a bit more purple maybe. Just mix it all up. And again, I'm using the size 6 for this. So I'm going to have it pointing this way this time. So I'm going to do the base here. And I'm gonna kind of draw this petal shape like that. And then I'm just gonna kind of, just with the tip of my brush, just draw a little bit of a petal on that side. And then I'm gonna have another one kind of coming out this way. Maybe I'll have just a little small petal that's fallen down here. You just tap using the shape of my brush. Like that. I'm just going to grab a bit more purple. Just bring it close to the base here just to give it a bit of depth. And then let's do our center, just those squiggly lines, kind of like they would be over here too. Maybe we can do a little bit more of a petal right there. And then we're just gonna do our rounded petal shapes over the top. It doesn't have to look necessarily like a full flower, right? Like, just do some petal shapes when in doubt sometimes. I mean, that one doesn't look that great. I'm okay with that. Kind of looks a little messy, but that is okay. I grab my yellow. Just draw some petal shapes and see what happens. Like when you turn it back, it just looks like a bunch of petals anyway, right? Let's grab some green. Have some greenery coming out the side here. On this side. Actually, it should be that dark green because it's a rose. You can mix it. Like that. Okay. So now we have a little bit of white space to work with. I'm going to take some pinks and stuff and do some small little buds. Or you could even do some yellows if you wanted to have little yellow buds in between. I'm just going to do some like little bud shapes, little tiny buds like this. Just using the shape of my brush. You're going to have a bud coming up from leaves right here. Coming out here. Maybe down here. Just kind of try and evenly move this color around just so it kind of blends, not blends it all together, but just makes it look cohesive, like it belongs in the same painting. Just little bits of this pink kind of placed throughout. Okay. I'm going to grab a green, whatever green you want. And you can just do a tiny little stem. Maybe it's hiding behind this leaf here. So you don't feel like you have to finish the stem. Just do little leaves. You can even just do like a little stem of leaves here, just using the tip of your brush. Remember, just the dabbing motion with the tip of your brush like that. Just filling up those spaces. Like that. And then there's still more spaces, so we can do either just leaves or more buds. I'm going to use this lighter green, I think. And I'm just going to fill it with some greenery, just some light greenery, just some leaf shapes. Doesn't even have to really belong anywhere. You're just filling in that space. Okay, especially towards the edges. So when you erase the pencil marks, it looks like it's just naturally kind of, like right here, there's a little bit of white where the edge would be. So I'm just going to go right to that edge with watercolor, not touching the pencil, but just filling it in. So when we take away that pencil mark, it just kind of gives a really nice edge to it. Okay, like that. And like that. And that's all there is to it. Now, if you wanted to add a little bit more detail to your loose flowers, you could always do that. You could always grab a bit more color once it's dry and then just add some, lines with the tip of your brush just to give it some movement or texture. I didn't do this in the original painting, but it's totally up to you. There are no rules. Just because we're following, is this dry? That's not dry yet. Just because we're following one of my tutorials right here now doesn't mean that you can't take it to the next level or experiment yourself. Just play around and see what looks good to you. See what you like. Maybe you can do some layers of more petals. So if you're doing some wet on dry, so you have wet paint and the flower's dry, you're going to get sharper lines. Maybe you can do some sharper petals if you wanted to. Like that, just to give it a bit more sharpness. Whatever works for you. Whatever you want. No, that's still wet. Is it wet? Oh, it's basically dry. Maybe I can do a couple little lines here. But wait till it's dry or else it will have a weird color bleed happening there. But there you go. You could always do lines on the little leaves, whatever you want. Now you wait for it to completely dry before you erase your pencil mark or it will smudge the paint. So wait for it to completely dry and then you can erase it. And there you go. There is your finished piece. Thank you guys so much for watching and purchasing your box. I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Feel free to watch it as many times as you'd like. Mix more colors, try a new painting, and just keep being creative. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.